The obituary was written, the eulogies delivered, and the grief was real. But the woman everyone mourned wasn't dead. She was hiding in plain sight. On a quiet Sunday morning, the town of Briar Hollow gathered beneath gray skies, clutching black umbrellas and trembling hands. The church bells rang slowly, each chime echoing like a final heartbeat. Inside the chapel, a framed photograph rested atop a polished oak coffin. Evelyn Carter, aged 34, smiling softly, her eyes caught forever between warmth and sadness. They said she had drowned, that her car had been found abandoned near Blackwood Bridge, engine cold, driver's door open, purse still inside, that the river below, dark, wide, and merciless, had swallowed her whole. Search teams combed the water for days, dragging nets through reeds and mud. When no body surfaced, the police delivered the verdict people dreaded but accepted: presumed dead. Her husband, Daniel Carter, stood in the front pew, face hollow, hands clenched together as though prayer alone could keep him upright. Beside him sat Evelyn's sister, Mary Ann, barely breathing, eyes fixed on the coffin that held nothing but air and assumption. Everyone cried. Everyone believed. Except Evelyn. 3 weeks earlier, Evelyn Carter had stood in her bathroom, staring at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. The mirror showed a woman who had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind, every movement, every breath. On the counter beside her lay 3 things: a burner phone, a manila envelope stuffed with documents, and a single gold ring, her wedding ring. She slid it off slowly, as if removing it too quickly might break the spell. For a moment, she hesitated. Memories flooded in, laughter in the kitchen, whispered promises at night, the illusion of safety. Then the darker memories followed, uninvited but relentless. The control, the fear, the quiet threats disguised as love. Evelyn placed the ring into the envelope and sealed it shut. "This is the last day," she whispered to herself. She left the house before dawn, careful not to wake Daniel. The plan depended on precision. No goodbyes, no notes, no hesitation. By sunrise, Evelyn Carter was already disappearing. Blackwood Bridge was older than the town itself, its concrete edges cracked and weathered, overlooking a river that had claimed more than one life over the years. Evelyn parked exactly where she knew the cameras would catch her. She turned off the engine, opened the driver's door, and sat still, listening to the water below. Then she did something no one expected. She smiled. Evelyn removed her shoes, placed them neatly beside the door, and stepped out. She didn't jump. Instead, she climbed down the embankment, heart pounding, until she reached the shallow edge hidden from the road. There, tucked beneath overgrown brush, waited a waterproof bag containing dry clothes, cash, and a forged identity. Within minutes, Evelyn Carter ceased to exist, and Lena Moore was born. The town mourned for years. Daniel moved away, unable to stand the whispers or the pity. Mary Ann kept Evelyn's room untouched, convinced, against logic, that her sister might one day return. The case went cold, then colder, until it became nothing more than a tragic story people told newcomers. A woman who vanished, a body never found, a mystery left unsolved. What no one knew was that Evelyn had spent those years watching from a distance. She worked under different names, changed her hair, altered her posture, trained herself to disappear in crowds. She lived in cities where no one asked questions and small towns where people minded their own business. She learned how to survive with silence as her closest companion. But silence has a cost. Every birthday she missed, every holiday she spent alone, every headline she read about her death. And then one night, everything changed. 7 years later, Mary Ann Carter was sorting through old boxes when she found it. A postcard. No return address, No stamp she recognized. Just 4 words written in familiar handwriting. "I'm still alive." Her hands began to shake. The message was real, the handwriting unmistakable, and with it came a truth so impossible it shattered everything she thought she knew. Evelyn Carter hadn't died. She had run. And now, she was coming back. Evelyn Carter learned quickly that disappearing wasn't the hardest part. Staying gone was. The first rule of survival was simple: never look back. Not at familiar streets, not at old photographs, not at the life she had burned to the ground in order to escape it. The second rule was harder: become forgettable. That was how Lena Moore survived. She chose the name randomly, plucking it from a crumpled magazine on a bus seat somewhere between states. Lena sounded soft, unthreatening, the kind of woman people wouldn't remember 5 minutes after meeting her. She cut her hair short, dyed it darker, traded dresses for neutral clothes that blended into crowds. She practiced walking differently, head down, shoulders relaxed, eyes never lingering too long. Evelyn had once been noticed wherever she went. Lena made sure no one ever saw her at all. Her first job was in a roadside diner off a highway no one cared about. The owner didn't ask for much: cash payments, short shifts, no paperwork. Lena washed dishes until her hands cracked and bled, until the hot water burned away the ghost of the woman she used to be. At night, she slept in a tiny rented room above a laundromat, lulled by the constant hum of machines that never stopped moving. Movement became her comfort. If she stayed too long in one place, panic crept in. What if someone recognized her voice, her laugh? What if Daniel walked through the door one day, older but still unmistakably him? The fear kept her light on her feet. Years passed like that, blurred and fragmented. New cities, new names, temporary lives stacked on top of each other like discarded skins. Evelyn learned how to forge documents, how to avoid digital trails, how to disappear from social media before anyone even thought to look. But no matter how far she ran, grief followed. She grieved her sister the most. Marianne's face haunted her dreams, twisted with confusion and loss. Evelyn imagined her crying alone, clutching memories that no longer made sense. Some nights, guilt crushed her chest so tightly she thought she might suffocate. Yet every time she considered reaching out, another memory stopped her. Daniel's voice, low, controlled, dangerous. "You don't leave me," he had once whispered, smiling in a way that never reached his eyes. "Not unless you want everything to burn." Evelyn believed him, so she stayed silent. Daniel Carter mourned loudly at first. Public grief suited him. It earned him sympathy, absolution, and attention. He cried at interviews, spoke of Evelyn like a saint, told anyone who would listen how broken he was, how incomplete his life had become. But grief, like patience, had never been his strength. Within 2 years, the tears dried up. He remarried, moved cities, started over in a way that looked healthy from the outside. People praised his resilience, his ability to move on. No one noticed how quickly he erased Evelyn. No one noticed how angry he became when her name was mentioned. And no one noticed the quiet relief behind his eyes. The postcard arrived on a Tuesday. Marianne almost threw it away with the rest of the junk mail. It was small, unremarkable, addressed in block letters that looked deliberately messy. But something about it made her pause. She turned it over. "I'm still alive." 4 words, no explanation, no signature. Marianne's knees buckled as she sank into a chair, breath trapped somewhere between disbelief and terror. She read the words again and again, hoping they would change. They didn't. The handwriting was unmistakable, slanted slightly to the right, heavy pressure on the downstrokes. Evelyn's. Her sister was alive, and she had been gone for 7 years. Marianne didn't tell anyone, not the police, not friends, not even her husband. The truth felt too fragile, too dangerous to share. Instead, she waited.
Every day after work, she checked the mailbox with trembling hands, hoping for another sign. 2 weeks later, it came. Another postcard. I couldn't stay. I didn't have a choice. Marianne pressed the card to her chest and sobbed. Evelyn hadn't planned to make contact. She told herself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness brought on by exhaustion and loneliness. But the truth was simpler. Hiding had stopped feeling like living. She was tired of running, tired of pretending she had no past, tired of waking up every day as someone who didn't exist. Most of all, she was tired of being afraid. The decision to return didn't come all at once. It came in fragments, news articles she read online, old photographs she stumbled across, the quiet realization that the world had moved on without her. Daniel had moved on. That fact unsettled her more than she expected. She began researching under layers of anonymity, piecing together the life she'd abandoned. She learned about Daniel's new wife, his promotion, his carefully curated image. And then she learned something that made her blood run cold. Daniel was running for public office. A man with secrets, a man with a past, a man who believed Evelyn Carter was safely buried. Evelyn understood then that her disappearance hadn't just saved her, it had protected him. And that was something she could no longer allow. The day Evelyn stepped back into Briar Hollow, the town didn't recognize her. She stood at the edge of Main Street, heart pounding, as memories collided with reality. Buildings looked smaller, colors duller. Time had worn everything down, except the fear crawling up her spine. She pulled her coat tighter, took a breath, and walked forward. Somewhere nearby, her sister was living a life built on a lie. Somewhere nearby, a man who thought he had won was about to learn the truth. Evelyn had returned, and nothing would ever be the same.
Marianne Carter had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. Sometimes Evelyn came back smiling, apologetic, alive and untouched by time. Other times, she arrived broken, hollow-eyed, a stranger wearing her sister's face. In Marianne's worst nightmares, Evelyn never came at all. Only another letter, another fragment of hope designed to keep her waiting forever. Reality was none of those things. The knock came just after sunset. 3 sharp taps, deliberate, controlled. Marianne froze in her kitchen, dishcloth slipping from her fingers. Her heart slammed so hard it hurt. She knew, before she reached the door, before she turned the handle, that this was it. When the door opened, the woman standing there looked familiar and unfamiliar all at once. Her hair was shorter, darker, her face thinner, etched with lines that hadn't been there before. But her eyes, those unmistakable gray eyes, were exactly the same. "Hi, Mari," the woman said softly. Marianne didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stared, mouth open, as 7 years of grief collided with impossible truth. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her sister, gripping her like she might vanish again if she let go. "You're real," Marianne whispered, voice breaking. "You're really here." Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed in the scent of home. "I never stopped being real," she said. "I just stopped being seen." They talked until dawn. Words spilled out in fragments at first, apologies, half-finished explanations, broken sentences tangled with tears. Evelyn told Marianne everything she could without yet touching the darkest parts. She spoke of fear, control, the suffocating weight of a life she couldn't escape. Marianne listened, hands clenched tightly in her lap. "You could have told me," she said finally. "You could have trusted me." "I wanted to, every day, but if I told you, you would have tried to protect me, and he would have noticed." Daniel's name hovered between them like a threat. "Does he know?" Marianne asked. Evelyn shook her head. "Not yet." Marianne swallowed. "Then we have to be careful. He's not the man people think he is." Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "I know.
Daniel Carter was 3 days away from announcing his candidacy. The event was supposed to be perfect. Local press, smiling supporters, carefully rehearsed speeches about family values and perseverance. He had built his new life meticulously, brick by brick, ensuring no cracks showed through the surface. But cracks were already forming. His new wife, Rachel, noticed first. "You've been distracted," she said one night, watching him pace their living room. "Is this about the campaign?" Daniel forced a smile. Just nerves. But the truth was gnawing at him. For the first time in years, Evelyn's name had resurfaced, subtly at first, in dreams he couldn't shake, in moments where he swore he saw her reflection in glass. He told himself it was stress, guilt, the past clawing for attention. Then the call came, an unknown number. Daniel almost ignored it. Almost. "Hello, Daniel?" He answered. Silence. Then a breath. Soft. Familiar. "Hello, Daniel." The phone slipped from his hand. Evelyn ended the call before he could speak. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She had rehearsed this moment just as carefully as her disappearance. She hadn't planned to confront him yet, but something about knowing he was preparing to step into power made her skin crawl. Marianne stared at her, pale. "You called him?" "I needed him to know," Evelyn said. "Not everything, just enough." "That's dangerous," Marianne whispered. "You don't know what he'll do." Evelyn met her gaze. "I know exactly what he'll do." Daniel didn't sleep that night. He replayed the voice over and over in his mind. It couldn't be her. It had to be a trick, a cruel coincidence, a prank timed perfectly to unnerve him. But deep down, he knew. The dead don't call you by name. The next morning, he ordered a background check, off the books. Digital footprints, financial anomalies, anything that shouldn't exist. What he found terrified him. A series of identities that didn't quite line up, cash movements that vanished just as quickly as they appeared. A woman who moved like a ghost through systems designed to track people. Someone had survived. Someone had planned. And that someone was coming for him. Evelyn stood in front of the mirror again that night, just as she had years ago. Only this time, she wasn't preparing to disappear. She was preparing to be seen. The past she had buried was clawing its way back to the surface, dragging secrets with it. Secrets Daniel would do anything to keep hidden. She didn't know yet how this would end. She only knew she could no longer stay silent. Marianne placed a hand on her shoulder. "Once this starts," she said gently, "there's no going back." Evelyn nodded. "I didn't come back to be safe," she said. "I came back to tell the truth." Outside, sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, and for the first time in 7 years, Evelyn Carter wasn't running anymore.
The first public sighting happened in the frozen foods aisle. Evelyn didn't plan it that way. She had pulled her hood low, sunglasses perched on her nose, her body moving on instinct rather than intention. Briar Hollow's grocery store hadn't changed much. Same flickering lights, same narrow aisles, same sense that everyone knew everyone else. She was reaching for a bag of ice when she heard her name. Not Lena, not softly. "Evelyn?" Her heart stopped. The voice belonged to Mrs. Halbrook, her old high school English teacher, now older but unmistakable. The woman squinted, disbelief flickering across her face. "No," Mrs. Halbrook said slowly. "That's not possible." Evelyn could have denied it. She could have walked away, pretended to be someone else. 7 years of survival training screamed at her to run. Instead, she lifted her sunglasses. "Yes," she said quietly, "it is." Mrs. Halbrook gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "But you died." Evelyn offered a sad smile. "That's what everyone thinks." By evening, the town was buzzing. A woman who looked exactly like Evelyn Carter had been seen. Some claimed it was a cruel impersonator. Others insisted grief was playing tricks on people's minds. But photos began circulating, blurry, poorly lit,
yet impossible to ignore. The dead don't leave grocery carts behind. Marianne watched the news coverage in silence. "You said you'd wait," she murmured. Evelyn sat beside her, hands folded. "I didn't mean for it to happen like that. But now it has, and once people start talking, the police won't be far behind." Evelyn nodded. "That's the point." Detective Samuel Reyes had never liked unsolved cases. They lingered, they festered, they made him doubt his instincts. When the call came about Evelyn Carter, his first reaction was irritation. False sightings happened all the time, especially with missing persons cases that had become local legends. But something about the footage unsettled him. The woman moved like someone used to watching her surroundings, like someone hiding. Reyes reopened the file that night. Car abandoned, purse inside, no body recovered. He'd accepted the ruling back then, presumed dead, because the evidence pointed nowhere else. But now, with fresh eyes, the gaps felt glaring. Too neat, too clean. A woman doesn't simply vanish without leaving something behind, unless she wants to. Daniel Carter saw the footage while brushing his teeth. The glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the sink. He stared at the screen, breath coming in short bursts. The woman's face was older, sharper, but it was her. The posture, the tilt of her head, the way she scanned the room before turning away. Evelyn, alive. The carefully built walls around his life began to crumble. His phone buzzed, another unknown number. This time, he answered. "You should have stayed dead." Evelyn's voice was calm. "You should have let me go." Daniel laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. "You think coming back gives you power? You disappeared. You abandoned everything." "I escaped, and now I'm done hiding." "You have no proof. No one will believe you." Evelyn paused. "That's where you're wrong." The press conference was chaos. Police officials stood stiffly behind podiums as reporters shouted questions over one another. The headline was already circulating online. "Woman presumed dead 7 years ago may be alive." Detective Reyes took the microphone. "We are aware of recent developments regarding the disappearance of Evelyn Carter. At this time, we are reopening the investigation." A hand shot up. "Are you saying the death was faked?" Reyes hesitated. "We are saying we need answers." Across town, Evelyn watched from a dimly lit room, her pulse steady. Marianne sat beside her. "Once the investigation starts, everything comes out, the good and the bad." "I know. That's why I'm here." Reyes's first stop was Daniel Carter. The house was immaculate, too immaculate. Every surface polished, every photograph placed with intention. Family portraits featured Daniel, Rachel, and her teenage son from a previous marriage. Evelyn was nowhere to be found. "You were married to Evelyn Carter?" Reyes asked. Daniel nodded solemnly. "The love of my life." Reyes studied him. "When was the last time you spoke to her?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "The night she disappeared." A lie. Reyes could hear it in the cadence, see it in the way Daniel avoided eye contact just a second too long. "Did she ever talk about leaving?" Reyes asked. "No," Daniel replied quickly. "She was happy." Another lie. Reyes closed his notebook. "We may be in touch." After the detective left, Daniel locked the door and sank onto the couch. He knew how this ended. Either Evelyn was silenced again, or everything he had built would collapse. That night, Evelyn made her decision. She stepped into the light, contacting a journalist known for exposing powerful men. She provided proof, bank records, recorded conversations, documentation she had quietly gathered over the years. Insurance fraud, coercive control, threats disguised as love, and something darker, much darker. The journalist listened in silence. If this goes public, there's no one doing it. Evelyn met his gaze. Good. As the story broke nationwide, Daniel's campaign was suspended. Supporters withdrew, allies distanced themselves, and buried beneath layers of charm and respectability, the truth began to surface. Evelyn Carter hadn't just faked her death, She had survived something people weren't ready to face, and now the world was about to learn why.
The first accusation didn't come from Evelyn. It came from the past. Detective Reyes sat alone in his office long after midnight, files spread across his desk like pieces of a puzzle that finally wanted to be solved. Evelyn Carter's reopened case had become a doorway, one that led to other complaints, other women, other moments that had been quietly dismissed or explained away. Patterns were emerging. Daniel Carter's name appeared in places it shouldn't have. Old police reports flagged as insufficient evidence, restraining orders withdrawn without explanation, anonymous tips filed and forgotten. Daniel hadn't just survived Evelyn's disappearance, he thrived because of it. Evelyn remembered the night everything changed with painful clarity. It wasn't the first time Daniel had threatened her, but it was the first time she believed him. They had argued in the kitchen, voices low but venomous. She had told him she was leaving, that she couldn't live like this anymore. Daniel smiled. "You won't," he said. Then he reached into his jacket and placed a small vial on the counter between them. "Accidents happen," he continued softly. "Cars go off bridges. Women drown." Evelyn had frozen. "I don't need to touch you," he said. "I just need you scared enough to behave." That night, Evelyn realized something terrifying. Daniel didn't need her alive. He needed her silent. The evidence she gave the journalist was damning. Audio recordings captured Daniel's voice, calm, precise, threatening without ever raising his volume. Emails showed manipulation disguised as concern. Financial records revealed withdrawals timed with moments Evelyn tried to leave. But the most disturbing evidence came from a locked folder Evelyn had hesitated to open, even for herself. A woman named Claire Holloway. The name appeared in Daniel's college years, tied to a tragic overdose ruled accidental. Claire had dated Daniel briefly. Friends had reported controlling behavior. Then she was dead. The case was closed within weeks, too quickly. Reyes reopened Claire Holloway's file next. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Same charm, same isolation, same escalation when the woman tried to leave, same convenient conclusion. Reyes felt a chill crawl up his spine. This wasn't just emotional abuse. This was a pattern of survival through destruction. Daniel sensed the shift before the arrest warrant was ever signed. Rachel stopped asking questions and started watching him. Donors returned his calls with clipped politeness, or not at all. Friends he'd known for years suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. The man who had controlled every narrative was losing control. He confronted Rachel that night. "You believe her?" he demanded. Rachel's voice shook. "I believe the evidence." Daniel slammed his fist into the wall. "Everything I did for my family." Rachel stared at him. "Evelyn was your family." Daniel said nothing. Evelyn gave her first recorded interview 2 days later. She sat under bright studio lights, her face calm, but her hands clasped tightly together. Millions would watch this. Millions would judge. "Why fake your death?" the interviewer asked. Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Because I believed if I stayed, I wouldn't survive." "Why come back now?" "Because I realized my silence was protecting the wrong person." The interviewer leaned forward. "Are you accusing your husband of crimes?" "I'm telling the truth," Evelyn said. "What people do with it is their choice." The arrest came quietly. Daniel Carter was taken into custody on charges of coercive control, fraud, and obstruction. As investigators dug deeper, more women came forward, each story peeling away another layer of the man Daniel pretended to be. In his holding cell, Daniel sat alone staring at the wall. "You should have stayed dead," he muttered. For the first time, the words rang hollow. Evelyn stood outside the courthouse when she heard. Marianne hugged her tightly. "It's over," she whispered. Evelyn shook her head. "It's just beginning." Because justice moves slowly, and truth, real truth, demands a price. The courthouse was packed before sunrise. News vans lined the street. Reporters shouted questions into the cold morning air. Protesters gathered on both sides, some holding signs that read "Believe Survivors," others insisting Daniel Carter was being framed by a woman who had lied once before. Evelyn watched from the car, her reflection staring back at her in the glass. For 7 years, she had been a ghost. Today, she would be seen. The trial began with a question no one could ignore. Can a woman who faked her own death be trusted to tell the truth? Daniel's defense built their strategy around that doubt. They painted Evelyn as unstable, manipulative, dramatic. A woman capable of disappearing without a trace was, in their words, capable of inventing anything. She deceived an entire town, the defense attorney said smoothly. Why should we believe her now? Evelyn sat still, jaw clenched. Marianne squeezed her hand beneath the table. When Evelyn took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth, something she hadn't done publicly in nearly a decade. The prosecutor began gently. Why did you leave? Evelyn took a breath. Because I believed my husband would kill me. Gasps rippled through the room. The defense pounced. No physical injuries, the attorney sneered. No police reports, no witnesses, just your word. Evelyn met his gaze. Control doesn't always leave bruises. She described the threats, the isolation, the slow erosion of autonomy. She spoke of the vial on the kitchen counter, the way fear became routine. Some jurors looked away, others leaned forward. Then came the cross-examination. You staged a crime scene. You abandoned your family. You let your sister mourn you. Yes, Evelyn said quietly, and I live with that every day. So you admit you're a liar. Evelyn paused. I admit I did what I had to do to survive. Silence followed. Not the kind filled with doubt, the kind filled with recognition. Daniel watched from the defense table, his expression unreadable. When he took the stand, he smiled. He spoke of love, of loss, of betrayal. He framed himself as the victim of an elaborate hoax designed to destroy him. She wanted attention, and when she didn't get it, she vanished. The jury listened. Then the prosecution played the recordings. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom, calm, threatening, precise. Cars go off bridges, women drown. The smile vanished. Witnesses followed. Experts testified about coercive control. Former colleagues spoke of Daniel's temper behind closed doors. And then came Claire Holloway's sister. Her voice shook as she described losing her sister, how warnings had been ignored, how Daniel had walked away untouched. The room was very quiet. The verdict took 3 days. Evelyn waited, nerves raw, heart heavy. She knew justice wasn't guaranteed. She knew the world didn't always believe women, especially women who had lied once before. When the jury returned, Evelyn stood. Guilty, the foreperson said, on all major counts. Daniel didn't look at Evelyn as he was led away. He didn't need to. Outside, flashes of cameras lit the steps. How does it feel? Someone shouted. Evelyn closed her eyes. I wish I hadn't had to disappear to be believed. That night, Evelyn lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The trial was over, but healing was not. Some truths free you, others leave scars that never fade.
The day after the trial, Evelyn Carter woke up to a world that suddenly knew her name. Everywhere she looked, it was there. On screens, in headlines, whispered in cafes and grocery store aisles. Some called her a hero. Others called her a liar who had gotten lucky. Strangers debated her life as if it were fiction, dissecting her choices with the cold confidence of people who had never been afraid for their lives. Evelyn stayed inside. The house felt smaller now, as if the walls had moved closer overnight. For 7 years, anonymity had been her shield. Now visibility was unavoidable and strangely more frightening. "You don't have to read any of it," Marianne said gently, placing a mug of tea in front of her. "I know," Evelyn replied, "but I do." She scrolled past comments that praised her courage and others that accused her of manipulation, greed, or revenge. Some asked why she hadn't fought back, why she hadn't called the police, why she hadn't stayed, why she hadn't died quietly. Daniel Carter was sentenced 2 weeks later. The judge spoke of patterns, of power, of harm that extended beyond physical violence. Daniel stood stiff, his once perfect posture slightly hunched, his charm stripped bare. When the sentence was read, Evelyn felt no triumph, only release. Freedom, she learned, was not the same as peace. Nightmares came without warning. Loud noises sent her heart racing. Simple choices, where to go, what to wear, sometimes felt overwhelming. The survival instincts that had kept her alive didn't fade just because the danger had passed. Her therapist called it post-survival response. Evelyn called it exhausting. One afternoon, she returned to Blackwood Bridge. The river moved quietly beneath her, indifferent to the history layered into its depths. She stood where her car had once been found, imagining the woman she had been, terrified, determined, desperate. "I survived," she whispered. The wind carried the words away. Marianne struggled too. "You disappeared," she said one night, tears slipping down her cheeks. "And even though I understand why, part of me still feels abandoned." Evelyn nodded. "I abandoned you." Marianne shook her head. "You survived." Both were true. Healing, they learned, was not about erasing the past, but learning how to hold it without letting it crush you. Letters began arriving. Some were from women who saw their own lives in Evelyn's story. Others were from people apologizing for judgments they made. A few were angry, cruel, unforgiving. Evelyn read them all. The last letter came from someone unexpected. Rachel Carter. "I believed him," the letter read. "I defended him. I'm sorry." Evelyn folded the paper carefully. "I forgive you," she said aloud, though she wasn't sure who the words were really for. Months passed. The media frenzy faded. New stories replaced hers. Evelyn took small steps toward rebuilding, volunteering at a support center, speaking quietly to women who needed to know escape was possible. She didn't tell them to fake their deaths. She told them to trust their instincts. One evening, Evelyn stood in front of a mirror again, not to disappear, not to prepare, just to look. The woman staring back was older, scarred in ways no one could see, but she was whole. For the first time in years, Evelyn didn't feel like a ghost. She felt like herself. Evelyn believed the danger ended with the verdict. That belief lasted exactly 3 months. It began with something small, an email with no subject line, no message, just a single attachment that wouldn't open. She deleted it, unsettled but unwilling to panic. Survivors, her therapist had told her, often mistake fear for threats. Then the calls started. Silent, late at night, always from blocked numbers. Evelyn stopped answering. Detective Reyes didn't like coincidences. When Evelyn contacted him, his jaw tightened. "Daniel has no access to phones," he said. "But that doesn't mean he didn't leave contingencies." "Contingencies for what?" Evelyn asked. Reyes hesitated. Control. The truth surfaced through a bank audit. Hidden accounts, offshore transfers, payments made years ago to people who weren't supposed to exist. Daniel hadn't just controlled Evelyn, he had invested in silence. One name appeared repeatedly: Marcus Hale. Private investigator, former military, no current address. "He was watching me," Evelyn whispered. "Yes, and possibly still is." Marianne insisted Evelyn leave town. "You don't owe this place anything," she pleaded. "You survived. That should be enough." Evelyn shook her head. "Running again won't fix this." but fear had already crept back into her bones. Every shadow felt deliberate. Every stranger felt observant. The skills she had once used to disappear returned without invitation. Mapping exits, scanning reflections, memorizing faces. She hated how easily she slipped back into survival mode. The break-in happened on a rainy Tuesday. Nothing was stolen, nothing was broken, except the message left on her wall. You can still vanish. The letters were clean, precise, intentional. Reyes moved fast. Surveillance was installed. Patrols increased. The task force widened their scope. But Evelyn knew, deep down, that this wasn't random. This was Daniel's final lesson. You don't leave me. Marcus Hale was found 2 states away, dead, ruled a suicide. Reyes didn't believe it. Neither did Evelyn, because tucked into Hale's personal effects was a burner phone, its last call made to a prison facility, Daniel Carter's facility. The public never learned the full story. The investigation was sealed. Official statements cited no ongoing threat. Daniel was placed under stricter monitoring, his communication privileges revoked entirely. But Evelyn knew something else too. The man who had nearly destroyed her life had built systems designed to outlive him, and some shadows don't disappear when the light comes on. One night, Evelyn stood at her window, staring at her reflection in the glass. For years, she had been the one hiding. Now, someone else was afraid. That realization changed everything.
The idea came to Evelyn the way most dangerous ideas do, quietly. Not as panic, not as fear, but as clarity. If Daniel's power came from knowing where she was, who she was, how to reach her, then the only way to end it wasn't to run again. It was to take that power away. Detective Reyes didn't like her plan. Disappear again? He said flatly. After everything you've done to be seen? Evelyn shook her head. Not disappear, transform. Reyes leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. Explain. He built his control on the belief that I was predictable, traceable, afraid. I want him to know none of that is true anymore. Reyes was silent for a long moment. This is dangerous. So was staying, Evelyn replied. Daniel Carter sat alone in his cell when the news reached him. A rumor at first, then confirmation. Evelyn Carter has left the country. No location disclosed, no sightings, no digital footprint, just absence. Daniel smiled for the first time in months. She finally learned, he whispered. But the smile didn't last, because 2 days later his lawyer received an anonymous package. Inside was a single flash drive and a note. You taught me how power works. Now watch what happens when it's used against you. The contents detonated like a bomb. Hidden recordings, financial trails, names, dozens of them connected to Daniel's past. Not just victims, but collaborators, people who had taken money, favors, promotions, silence. The evidence wasn't meant for court. It was meant for the world. Journalists received copies. Advocacy groups did too. So did federal investigators who had once dismissed whispers as exaggerations. Daniel's crimes were no longer personal. They were systemic. Marianne watched the coverage from her living room, heart in her throat. She knew Evelyn wasn't gone. She was everywhere. Evelyn sat in a small apartment overlooking a foreign city, watching the same headline scroll across her screen. Her hair was lighter now, her accent softened. Her name, once again, was not Evelyn Carter. But this time, she wasn't hiding from fear. She was hiding from reach. She had learned something during her years as a ghost. Disappearance didn't have to mean silence. It could mean freedom from expectation, from patterns others thought they understood. She could speak without being cornered, act without being hunted, exist without permission. Daniel's reaction was not rage. It was desperation. He demanded meetings, threatened lawsuits, claimed conspiracy, but every outburst only added weight to the truth Evelyn had released.
When the parole board reviewed his case months later, the decision was swift. No early release, no privileges, no exceptions. Control, once lost, does not return easily. One night, Evelyn received a message on an encrypted channel she hadn't used in years. From Reyes. "It's over," he wrote, "as much as it can be." She stared at the words for a long time. Over was a strange concept. Some endings were clean. This one was earned. Evelyn began working quietly with international organizations, helping survivors relocate, rebuild identities, reclaim autonomy. She never told them to vanish. She told them the truth. You don't owe the world your pain to prove it existed. Her story became legend in some circles, a cautionary tale in others, a symbol of something uncomfortable but undeniable. Sometimes survival looks like disobedience. On the anniversary of her death, Evelyn walked to the edge of a river far from Blackwood Bridge. She removed her shoes, not to disappear, but to feel the water. She closed her eyes and let the past pass through her, not as fear, not as shame, but as memory. I lived, and for the first time, the words felt complete.
No one announced Evelyn Carter's return this time. There were no sirens, no cameras, no headlines, because this return wasn't about proving anything to the world. It was about choosing how to live. Years later, in a coastal town where the sea met the sky without borders, a woman walked the shoreline every morning just after sunrise. The locals knew her as Elena, a quiet woman with kind eyes who helped at a community center and never spoke much about her past. She wasn't hiding. She was rooted. The life she built was small, deliberate, and entirely her own. No one controlled her schedule. No one monitored her steps. Every choice, from the way she wore her hair to the name she signed, was hers alone. That, she learned, was freedom. Daniel Carter died in prison. The notice appeared in a short column on the third page of a newspaper. No photo, no commentary. A man who once believed himself untouchable, reduced to a few lines of ink. Evelyn read the article once. Then she folded the paper and let it go. There was no satisfaction in his ending, only finality. Marianne visited that summer. They sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, the ocean humming softly in the distance. "You don't owe me anything," Marianne said, breaking the silence. "Not explanations, not apologies." Evelyn smiled. "I know." They had learned how to love each other in this new shape, without guilt, without expectations rooted in who they used to be. Some relationships don't return to what they were. They become something better. Evelyn continued her work quietly. She helped women cross borders, emotional and literal ones. She taught them how to reclaim agency, how to recognize danger before it spoke aloud, how to trust themselves again. She never shared every detail of her story, only the part that mattered. "You're not crazy," she would say. "You're responding to something real." That truth saved lives. On the anniversary of the day she vanished, Evelyn walked alone to the water's edge. She remembered the fear, the planning, the impossible choice. She also remembered the woman who stood in her bathroom years ago, slipping off a wedding ring and whispering, "This is the last day." She had been wrong. It wasn't the last day. It was the first. Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed deeply, letting the wind tangle her hair, letting the salt air fill her lungs. She didn't regret faking her death. She regretted living in a world where it had been necessary. But regret no longer defined her. She had survived. She had spoken. She had come back, not as a ghost, not as a victim, but as a woman who chose herself. And that was the truth no one could bury.